podcast on condenser mics and how to do a podcast.
Are we qualified?
As soon as we have a podcast live, and if someone is hearing this right now, we have a podcast live, right?
I guess so.
So we qualify
I'm not sure if our sound quality qualifies us. At the same time.
Oh, come on! No. Definitely qualifies us. I saw podcasts where they interview people, and obviously these people don't have a professional setup.
Yeah, sure.
And do we have a professional? I mean, we have 2 condenser mics, so that I think that counts.
I have a microphone. That is my professional setup.
I mean, that's a lot more than some AirPods, right?
Yeah, and I'm also shocked. I mean, I'm listening to a lot of investing podcasts, and for people managing money, they're surely skimming out on the professional equipment. Some of them sound really cheap.
If you're investing 20K every day, come on, just take $100 and buy a
I guess that's
the Blue Yeti, right?
If you don't invest it.
Oh, it is an investment.
If you buy stuff.
If you're on a finance podcast, it is an investment for the podcast.
I guess so.
So it will have its return at some point, right?
An optimistic person would buy a microphone. I agree.
Or just get a second hand. Come on, you don't even have to spend $100.
But in Corona times, all the Corona that is stuck in the grow, cannot do that.
Oh, that is a good point. You have to meet in person too. Oh no, you can buy it on eBay and they can send it. You can buy it on eBay.
But I was thinking about this, so upgrading my microphone, but then going second hand. But it did feel awkward, having someone for hours on end talking into the thing and I take it over.
You can just have a pop filter, and that's this is kind of protected, right?
I do. Yeah, at least get a fresh pop filter. Don't put your nose in the old one.
Or you can just buy it and then wait 3 months to prepare the podcast like we did, and then
all the bacteria
it will have exactly.
Or cook it.
Awesome.
Like
do you have a question for me?
Of course, I have a question.
Okay.
I come perfectly prepared. And I was wondering, if you think back the last 2 years of everything that you've seen, which would be the series that you would want the people to listen or watch?
The series.
Is there one? I know it would be rough for me. It's a tough question, especially out of the blue.
It's usually a 50-50 tie on series. On my top 1, it will probably be between Breaking Bad.
Last 2 years, though.
Oh, last 2 years. Okay, sorry. Last 2 years.
But
oh my God, that is bad. Okay. Damn it, I was going.
That was a cop-out answer, though.
I was going with Company of Years is also the other one. Wait a minute. Last 2 years is tricky. I would go definitely. No, but Dark went. Dark is 2017.
Yeah, I guess the first season was
2017. Damn it, it doesn't count either. I was a huge fan of the first season of Altered Carbon.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Very good one. The second season, though, I don't know.
The second season is tricky. It is not the level of the first one, at least.
Yeah, I was thinking about this. What has Netflix been doing all this time?
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah. The first one that jumps to my mind is The Boys.
Oh, come on. Yeah, that is so accurate. Yeah.
But it's really developing into a direction that I appreciate a lot, for sure.
Yeah, I will scrap Altered Carbon and jump into your bandwagon of The Boys. That is completely true. The Boys.
Yeah, awesome. Homelander, best character on television. I mean,
right now, probably, yeah.
I like The Butcher too, of course. But I felt like The Butcher plays second fiddle in the season.
I love that New Zealand accent. It's so awesome.
It is true.
It is so awesome.
But is he New Zealand, actually?
He is. So we're talking about Carl Urban.
New Zealandish.
And yeah, but he has. I think his dad is German.
Really?
Yeah.
So he speaks German too?
He doesn't speak German though.
Damn it. That would have been awesome.
That would be awesome, yeah.
He should. Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah, but probably The Boys. Yeah, that is. I don't know how I completely forgot about it. But
yeah, I only came up with that question because past The Boys, I really find it hard to come up with anything.
That is true, and especially on Netflix, which was usually getting so much awesome content out, and obviously they're betting on developing the content that was successful for them. So we have third or fourth season of Stranger Things. We had all the Marvel stuff that now they don't have because it's going to be on Disney Plus, or it is on Disney Plus. But they were also doing second and third season of Daredevil, doing the Luke Cage 1 and 2, Jessica Jones 1, 2, 3. So they were really focusing on developing the stuff that they knew that worked. But it's been a while since they got this hit. Also, Lucifer, it's season 5 now. They're also doing the second season of Cobra Kai. Cobra Kai, I have to watch that one.
Yeah.
But they bought it from YouTube, but they're building on that success. So it's been a while since they had a hit show.
Somehow, yes.
Oh, I have another one. The Haunting of Hill House.
Yeah, I was wondering if that is 2018. I guess it was, right?
I guess it was 2018, so it counts the last 2 years.
I just watched it the second time around, and I really enjoyed that one for sure.
And we have Sex Education.
Shit. Maybe I have to exchange The Boys.
The Boys for Sex Education?
Sex Education was really a surprise at that.
Yeah. I would still go with The Boys. Second, Sex Education.
Yeah. Sex Education is also really good.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of content, today we want to talk about a platform which is a very good way of delivering your content, either for publishing houses, but also, of course, for purposes like we do day to day. It is your favorite platform, I believe.
It is. So it is native advertising. It's what we're talking about. And to give an idea of what native advertising is, and I'm going to quote one of the biggest ones, which is Outbrain. Native advertising is the use of paid ads that match the look, feel, and function of the media format in which they appear. Okay, so these ads are very easy to spot, or the easiest way to spot these ads is when they show when they show up as recommended, promoted, or sponsored content on a web page, usually a news article, and they can even look like a post on a feed. So they look like a suggestion to another article and don't really look like ads. So they blend very well in the editorial flow, let's say, and of the feel and look of the page. Right, so when you're scrolling and reading an article, and then you have some suggested content on the bottom, saying, well, something that looks like another article, those might be that might be native advertising.
Mm-hmm. So they're kind of a modern extension of what advertorials used to be. So as you already said, advertising hidden as content, and it also, at least lately, it starts following the modus that also social media platforms follow, which is the infinite scroll. So it also delivers kind of infinite content to many web pages that we use today. So you will always find something new as long as you keep scrolling.
Exactly. In some way, the social media ads that you find on Facebook are a kind of native ads, but we classify them as social media ads just because they are in a social media platform. But it would be more or less the same idea, that they are blended in and they're not like the usual and classic Google display ads that you just see the ad and you say, okay, this is obviously a Google ad, right? So I have a question for you that actually goes also for me, but I mean, for the sake of it, you started investing in native before I did, right? I came a little bit later to the team, well, a little bit, 2 or 3 years. But you started this movement in the company, so why did you start investing time and budget into native? What was the reasoning behind it?
Well, the first part is very easy, and this is also something that we talked about already. That is just to simply diversify our sources. Generally, native traffic is or not native traffic itself, but the publishers that also offer native advertising as a part of their deals. It is often very hard to get good spots, for example, on simple display advertising. So going through native advertising gives us a much better array of publishers that we can reach in the first place. Also, well, I will say sensible price, but that is not necessarily true. But at the same time, also get good coverage on those pages. But to be honest, what really drove us, and that is something that I will quote, but I do still believe this has to be reevaluated in nowadays times. You mentioned already, display ads are very easy to spot, and or the user might get blind to them eventually, or probably for a majority already is. Native is always quoted as having a significantly higher click rate overall, and at the same time also featuring a much higher purchase intent of the users on the platform. And while I do believe that is true, it is also not always the same. In practice, we will come to that, but definitely what drove us to those platforms is the promise of people that do have the higher purchasing intent, and also generally are a little bit stronger on the purchasing power side, which is also, of course, related to whatever page you publish your advertising on, right? So
Yeah, that is
first.
Yeah, that's something that we definitely observed after we tried the platform. I would also add that it comes also from this idea that we dived into on the last episode, and was also the idea of getting away from Facebook dependence. So all the games that are in the industry know that Facebook is a main pillar of advertising, and most of the traffic and most of the budget goes into Facebook. So it was this idea of finding new channels that would work for UA. And going a little bit deeper, it was also part of our testing strategy, right? We have this testing strategy in place every quarter that we want to try new partners and see if they would work for the games. And native was also part of that, or at least some of the platforms that we tested was part of it.
And one thing I also would like to mention is why we are also still using it. So it was a desktop first platform, right? As you mentioned, this was also kind of jumped at us because desktop advertising on other platforms became increasingly difficult.
That is a good
point.
And
the platform is really, really potent on desktop, so to say, especially with a user kind that, for example, in our interest reaches finance or political news. Those are still often used, or at least in a long form format, often used that is taken by the user on the desktop rather than the phone. So it's a good way of reaching them. But even on phone now, I mentioned already the infinite scroll. The platform is getting more and more natural to avid mobile users, especially that are prone to social media, and this infinite scroll below the articles is just very natural. So it's nice to also fit your ads in there. Sometimes even in a very similar fashion to social networks, which is another advantage why we can also easily keep using it, even switching to mobile, of course. It's a great benefit that happened lately, or rather lately. I'm not sure, how long do they have the infinite scroll? I still feel like it's new. But maybe it's not that new.
For native advertising, you mean?
Yep.
It hasn't been a while. The smart feed. No, it hasn't been a while since they. I think they both have it already. And when I mention both, obviously, well, not obviously, but we're talking about Outbrain and Sabuldo, which are the major platforms for native advertising. But that's a good point, since also desktop or Facebook might not work for, and that is also one of the things that happened, right? Since desktop doesn't work for us on the Facebook side anymore, or at least like it used to, it is a good platform to have to still advertise this and not go full on the mobile side, because we know that the desktop users are more valuable than the mobile users, right?
Definitely, especially in Corona times.
So we actually went into the second question, the realm of the what is your product gaining by advertising through native? This is the second question I had for us. We already said, hey, you have a platform where you can advertise your desktop version. That is very interesting, since Facebook is getting more and more difficult for the desktop versions of all the games, because they are dropping actively dropping support. All the new features that come out for Facebook are full mobile, so you don't have any support for your desktop version. So you have here an alternative to bring traffic in. That is very interesting. You also mentioned some of the purchase intent already, so you can get these very valuable users into your game. And I want to go a little bit deeper on that, because, and I think you also touched it, but you'll be targeting a very premium set of placements with native advertisement. So I already mentioned this as well. You'll be shown in usually newspapers, or the online version of newspapers, on the bottom of articles. So, but these articles are usually by publishers like CNN, Fox News, CBS, ESPN. Depending on the platform that you use, you'll get access to one or another. So the users that are checking out these placements are incredibly valuable, and they are definitely more valuable than Google's. They can be usually better than Facebook's. So you'll get a lot of value out of that. We touched on some points already of the next question that I had for us. Okay, and my question for us was, what is your product gaining by being advertising through native, right? And we touched, as I said, we touched on some points already. You mentioned the purchasing power and the purchasing intent of these users that come from native, and that is because when you are advertising through native platforms, you'll get access to a very premium set of placements. Okay, so placements like CNN, Fox News, CBS, ESPN, depending on the platform that you're using. As I mentioned, the biggest ones are Taboola and Outbrain. So expect incredible, valuable users from these placements. So these users are definitely more valuable than Google, and they can usually be more valuable than Facebook. So that is one of the benefits of advertising on native. And you mentioned another one, which is a reliable or maybe profitable way to advertise your desktop version for your game, if you have one. If you come from where we come from, we had a desktop version for our games, and then we created mobile versions of those, and the games are now completely cross-platform. So it's very beneficial for us to advertise both versions, since we know that for a fact desktop versions are usually more valuable than the mobile users. So having this channel that can be profitable for us to advertise a desktop version when Facebook is dropping all its support for desktop marketing. I mean, all the new features that are coming out are specifically focused on mobile. This is very good to have a platform to advertise our client. So we touched on a couple of points. I was asking if you have any more benefits, or that a product or a game could gain by being advertising on native.
I think you summarized it already very well. Just one other point that I have, and we also mentioned it in the previous podcast, and for me personally, that is a very big benefit, and I kind of hate or love in the same way. It's always starting with, because Facebook is like this, we do this here, but also in this case, it is the unfiltered traffic situation. So as you already said, you can decide, I want to be advertised on Business Insider, and it will just be shown to people without investigating who is this guy, so you can just get people that use this page instead of already kind of cater to you people in advance. And it's a huge advantage in a sense that you can just explore the audience of a website, and you're not being steered by this invisible blue force all the time. I hate bringing up Facebook all the time, but
I know.
I guess that's how significant it is.
If we look into the budgets that we spend, I don't know, 70-80% goes into Facebook. So it's but it is what it is, right? If it's the biggest, it delivers. Yeah. We can complain as much as we want that we don't have control, and we cannot control, we cannot pause or boost creatives or placements. But in the end, if it delivers, we cannot complain as much. Right?
It is true. It's true.
Yeah. But that is also a good point, that on native you will probably have total or almost total control of your bids, and you can choose that if you want to go with only one placement, you can do that. So if you know that you can get valuable users or valuable players from CNN or Business Insider or whatever, you can say, hey, I'm going to milk this placement until there's no more users that haven't seen my game. And that's a very good benefit of it. We talked about the good stuff, and I'll give it to you since I mentioned almost all of the good stuff. You can talk about the bad stuff. So what are the greatest downsides of advertising in native platforms?
Also makes a lot of sense. Since I'm the guy that actually works less on those platforms, I feel like I get more exposed to its downsides, or at least what I see as its major downsides for it. I actually praised it in the last segment. Now I will say it's also a negative point, and it's definitely optimization. Since you're kind of flying blind in theory, and also the volume is very low, at least compared to other platforms, it's very hard to optimize for it. You also need to collect information for a very, very long time. And even if you have collected for a long time, often you make decisions between, 5 valuable users, and that's the placement that I like because I got 5 valuable users from this placement. So it's a completely different way of working with it. And I do think it's also a downside of it, ultimately. It also makes it very cost inefficient overall. But yeah, every positive side comes with a price, I guess, and that is the price of that. It is very manual. They do have automatic rules, but you have to be very careful with setting these up, ultimately. And then with the volume, also, there's a lot of fluctuation, even on a publisher base. For example, we've seen ads suddenly becoming very clicky on a certain publisher. Maybe they posted a certain news and our ad was below it and it was just responding much, much better than before. And suddenly we collect hundreds of clicks with no conversions on the other side, and just raised our prices a lot. That is something that can happen. And ultimately, it's just very hard to estimate how will the next week work on a given placement, just because you work with such little data. So I guess summarized, volume overall is my biggest downside to the platform in generally.
It can be like a vicious cycle, right? The placements are expensive. I mean, we're not kidding anyone. It is an expensive channel to advertise on, because CPCs are not low and conversion rate is usually lower than, everything is lower than Facebook, but it can be even lower than Google. So costs, CPIs are higher, and as a consequence, if you have high CPAs, you cannot scale as much, right? So the volume in consequence is going to be down. And you also mentioned obviously the manual optimization. You have to optimize everything manually. Rules can be there are some platforms that have rules. For example, Outbrain has now some very interesting rules that you can optimize placements and creatives automatically, depending on some KPIs. But that can also be tricky, because as you mentioned, Sometimes you have very valuable users and you can tolerate higher CPAs, right? And if you have automatic rules there, they probably will, or they can block your placement because they say, hey, this placement is way too expensive for your traditional KPIs. But we're not talking about traditional channel. So you might have incredibly valuable users that you're not taking because you're just blocking them with your automatic rules. The downside is that you will have to manually optimize, and that will take a lot of time. So it's a good idea to maybe have a dedicated person or a dedicated schedule to check this stuff on a regular basis. Yeah, I think that's it. But I mean, with all the good sides, there has to be some downsides.
Of course.
So I would go with the final remarks and final question, which kind of takes everything into account and puts it into a like a very good summary. It is stuff that we wish we knew before we started advertising. Okay, that is the last segment of the episode, and
I have one major one.
Okay.
And I think it's also exactly why we had the downfall the first time we tried it. So we probably tried it a year before you joined our team and kind of made it big, and the huge pillar it is now for us, native advertising. But when we tried it the first time, what was, I guess, we went at it as a self-serve platform. So we were optimistic about it. We had everything under our control. It is CPC, it doesn't take anything away from you. I mean, impression would be even better probably, but CPC already gives you a lot of control. But we completely underestimated just the amount of traffic that you can buy and the limited way that you can actually target in it. So what we underestimated is the necessity of having an account manager. We can tell a turnaround story for native just by looking also at the advice we got from the people actually working on the platform and helping us really develop our strategy. Maybe you can talk more about that in a minute. But also how we should steer the traffic across the platform without spending too much on the sites where it just does not make sense entirely. So for me,
that is a very interesting
ignoring
take.
the account managers.
I wouldn't.
Big mistake.
Yeah, but it is a very interesting topic. Something that is, it wouldn't have crossed my mind, but definitely on point. I have on my side stuff that we should know about before starting. I have don't get discouraged if initial results are bad. Okay, because it is a very expensive platform. And it requires a lot of optimizing on finding the right placements, on finding the right creatives. So as an example, and recently, I know it's not too much, but it took us at least a month to optimize the placements and creatives of our last mobile launch. Okay, and we know on Facebook that you can just start stuff and they will optimize instantly and you will get results, and you even have the honeymoon phase and whatnot. But we knew that, so we had a desktop game and we released a mobile version of it very recently, and native traffic worked very well for this game on desktop. So we knew that these placements were valuable for the game. And even knowing that, we went into mobile launch and we were advertising on the same placements on the same platform, and it took us a month to get into green numbers. So don't get discouraged, because even knowing all of this, it took us a lot of time to optimize placements and creatives. I have some tips on this, which would be optimize the placements very often, at least a week. Use rules if you can to avoid some very expensive placements. Block non-valuable and expensive ones, and boost the ones that are cheap or valuable. For example, for us, we know that CBS Sports is one of the best, so we boost it as much as we can. But there is a very steep learning curve, and it might take some time, But don't get discouraged about it and test as much as you can.
That is a very good point. As someone that gave up on it initially and then came back a lot later. Definitely a good point.
And even it can be on a platform level, but it can be even on a country or a campaign level. So it is easy to start a campaign, see that the CPAs are too high, and decide, hey, this interest doesn't work, or this country doesn't work. That's it, and let's move on. And maybe, and going back to your point as well, maybe you can ask your account manager, hey, I'm doing this. What should I do different? And he can set up some whitelisting campaigns and go into a totally different approach on the same country or the same interest, and it starts working. So yeah, don't give up on the first signs of a struggle, let's say.
I think that's something that we should get into in a later episode or follow-up episode. Exactly how we got it to work in the end, even though, as I already said, in the company we have given up on it previously.
Yeah, that
would be something interesting to talk about.
And I think it's also a valuable point for all the other platforms that we try. It's very easy to get discouraged in the beginning, if especially on stuff that is not algorithm optimized, and we have to do the work ourselves. Something to keep in mind for future tests.
Definitely.
Do you have any other? I have another one. It's very, very, very quick.
Go ahead.
And it is another stuff that I wish I knew is that a native platform is usually as good for your game as the publishers they have. So when choosing a platform to start with, choose according to that. So yeah, it's good to have fancy CPA goal optimization or rules or whatever, but if the publishers on those platforms are not good or not a fit to your game, the rest will not work. So if you see that a platform has certain placements that you know that it will work from experience from another ones, for example, if you have some placement information on Google and you know that these placements are on X platform, that is the one that you should try because you already have a track record of success. So it will be easier for you to get success on those platforms. If that makes sense. So for example, we knew that Fox News and CBS Sports were valuable because of our past successes on Google. So we knew that Taboola had those placements at that point. So it should have been an interesting decision to go with Taboola first because we know that we already had success there.
Exactly.
Do you have any other stuff that you wish you knew before you started advertising on native?
No. The patience and the support.
Patience. Do you have more
really
patience now?
For me. I do have more patience now. I'm in the process of kicking off another game, and I already went into it with the expectation that it will take some time. So I'm hanging in there and trying to make it work.
Awesome. So be patient and also embrace the grind to make native work because it can be worth it. If there's a fit between your game and all these native publishers.
Definitely. Fast.
Okay. So expect at some point a episode on how to make native work. If you liked this episode, we went into some topics of why you should try it or why you shouldn't try it. But if you are interested, we will do an episode on how to make this work if you're interested in this topic. Besides that, I think that's it for now. Right, Linus?
Yeah, I think we rounded out why we're using native generally. And now I'm really interested to discuss what exactly we're doing.
Awesome.
For next time.
Great. So see you next time. and stay safe.